Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Advanced Bass Fishing, and really appreciate you guys coming by the channel to check today's video out. Guys, today I want to talk about how do you know what color of lure to start out with when you just get out on the lake for the first time. It's like you got to have some type of beginning point. You don't really know what it's going to be the best color for the day. So I've got some tips and advice I'm going to share with you guys in today's little seminar that sort of gives you guys a foundational approach that you can build upon, once the day unfolds, but got to get started somewhere on those colors. So we're going to get started today on the video. Also, guys, just a quick invitation. I'd like to invite you to consider subscribing here to Advanced Bass Fishing. We're really working hard to get 10,000 subscribers. I think we're about 400 short of it now. So hitting that subscribe button and the like button for the videos really helps the channel out. And also, please check out my Fish the Moment lake map breakdowns that we're putting out. We got a lot of the winter maps up right now. Guys, these are great resources to learn more about your favorite lake on any season of the year. And also, if you purchase a map, I'm going to provide my email address that you can contact me for any personal fishing questions. So I'll put the Fish the Moment lake map breakdown link, the maps I built for Fish the Moment, in the description of this video. I really appreciate that. Okay, guys, I am a big stickler for color. A lot of people say that, oh, color's not that big of a deal. It's like bass will hit anything. That's not the case, guys. I have seen over and over and over again that color makes everything. I mean, certain color changes or making a switch on color not only can, allow you to start catching fish if you're not catching anything, or if you have found a few fish and you're catching fish on a certain color, by tweaking the color and experimentation and going to a different color can add up, to a lot more fish for you. So anyway, you've got to start out somewhere. And that's the thing about bass fishing. It's like not only with the color of lure that you're using, but the type of lure and the areas. You've got to begin somewhere. So I want to sort of get in a little bit about what colors that you want to choose. Now, we'll talk a little bit about hard baits and then soft baits both with it. A lot of this depends, in fact, the majority of it depends on water clarity. There's some other factors involved like water temperature, species of fish, time of day, different subtle colors. But when you're talking about primary colors that you got to begin with, your water clarity will dictate all that. Now, in general, if you're in a cleaner water environment, like water visibilities, say over 3.5 or 4 feet, your natural colored lures are going to work better, regardless if it's a hard bait or a soft bait. So, for example, on your soft baits, it's always going to be like your green pumpkins and your watermelons. And then on your hard baits, it's going to be your more natural translucent colors, sort of things that resemble maybe a shad or maybe even a crawdad, because a crawdad pattern can be subtle too. And then as you get into a little bit more off-colored water, that's when you start going into your darker colors and your soft plastics, like your June bugs, your red bugs, your tequila sunrise, black and blue. And in the hard baits, you're going to a lot more variation. You may have some metallic finishes. You may have some perch patterns a little bit brighter, chartreuse-sided blueback. You may have like some pearls or whites that stand out a little bit. But in general, that's sort of the gist of it. Now, the tricky part is that once you determine the foundation as far as the general color, in today's world of fishing, guys, there are thousands of different colors available. And obviously, you can't try all of them. But when you talk about tweaking a primary color with some type of addition to it, like, for example, instead of like a green pumpkin, creature bait, you can get them in like green pumpkin purple flake, green pumpkin red flake. You can get them watermelon red flake, watermelon black flake, a lot of different flake variations within soft plastics that can really accentuate that. And the same with the, hard bait colors. If you have some type of a black and chartreuse one, maybe sometimes the chartreuse is more of a faded variety, or maybe if you have a pearl colored crankbait, the brightness or the dullness of the pearl can be affected by different paint schemes. And then like on a crawdad pattern crankbait, you might have a reddish orange crawdad color, or then you may have a translucent green or brown. So there's a lot of variations within those certain colors that can dictate that. Now, I'm a big advocate of using these variations. I don't like to use just the basics. Like, I don't hardly ever use a straight green pumpkin, or I don't hardly ever use a straight watermelon, or I don't hardly ever use like a blackback chartreuse, or just some type of a white-sided blackback shad pattern. I like the variations in color. So if I'm fishing a soft plastic, I'm almost always using the flake involved in the soft plastic. I just think that that flake, in correlation with that color, generates a lot more strikes. So I don't care if the water visibility is like 3.5 feet or 5 feet or 6 feet. If I'm fishing like, a green pumpkin colored worm, say shaky head or something, I always like the flake in there, and the flake can be a little bit brighter than others. Like for example, like a watermelon red flake is a little bit more subtle than something like a green pumpkin purple flake. The purple stands out more. So I'm always sort of tweaking the flake based upon maybe the sunlight conditions in relationship to the water visibility or the time of day. So I'm always aware of that. And the same with the crankbaits or the jerk baits or anything like that. The time of day, as far as the light intensity and the sun angle hitting those particular areas, has a big deal to do with the colors you want to start out with. So anyway, that's just a little overview there. But to start out with, here's sort of what you need to know. It's like you're getting out there the first thing in the morning. Before you even start fishing, it's like go to your fishing spot. You may run 5 or 6 miles up the lake. Take a look at the water clarity. Take a look at the sunlight conditions and time of year, and then go from there. So say, for example, we get out there and that water visibility is, say, maybe it's 1.5 feet deep and we got a partly cloudy day. This is going to be a really good choice for some type of a little bit, and I want to fish a crankbait shallow. This is going to be a good choice for some type of a crankbait color that stands out a little bit, but maybe blends in a little bit. So like this would be a good, time for me to throw like a perch pattern, because a perch pattern has a little bit of chartreuse on it, but it's broken up a little bit with some ribs on it, and the back on it may be a little bit more subtle. It's a lot less, obtrusive than like just your standard chartreuse side blackback crankbait. Something a little bit more subtle with that. And I may start out with that. But say, for example, we fish that and I'm catching a few fish on it, and then all of a sudden it's noon or 1 o'clock and your light penetration is a lot more. You still have the same water clarity of about like 1.5 feet, but your light penetration within that 1.5 feet of clarity is a lot more. So sometimes then you have to change to maybe even a little bit more subtle of a color. You have to go to some type of a shad pattern based upon the light intensity coming to the water. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, say you get out there in the morning and it's partly cloudy and water visibility is 1.5 feet, and then it starts raining at noon and your light levels drop. That's when you want to go brighter to some, maybe like a white or a pearl, or to the chartreuse side black back, something that stands out a little bit more. But the main thing with the color, now this is one of the things you'll hear me talk about on all my channels, is, and I can relate this to you, but unless you were in the boat with me and I could show you, it's hard to describe. But regardless of the water clarity that you're fishing, your color pattern needs to blend in a little bit, and it needs to stand out a little bit. So you don't want a color that like stands out way too much, and you don't want a color that's invisible in the water. In other words, you don't want like a natural looking color in really dirty, low light conditions, and you don't want a brighter color like in bright sunlight conditions, a little bit cleaner water. Blend in a little bit, stand out a little bit. That's the key with it. And there's so many different options as far as colors. That's, you just have to sort of experiment with that a little bit. Now, another thing with that is I never start out with like the lure colors that are like real popular. In other words, I don't hardly ever throw like a sexy shad, because I think sexy shad gets fished a lot. And unless I've got real specific conditions, I don't go to the standard popular blackback chartreuse side. I try to stay away from those, and I try to go to a little bit more subtle, off the wall color a little bit, because one of the things I found out in fishing about lure colors, it's not necessarily the specific lure color that is the most important thing, but based upon the fishing pressure that the lake you have, sometimes just something different is more important than that specific lure color. Prime example, guys, is there's this one color that Norman used to make. It's called Smoky Joe, and it's sort of like it's a translucent looking, just it's sort of a grayish translucent looking lure. And at the first notice, you wouldn't think, well, that thing's probably not very good in off-colored water. But if I get the right set of conditions, like the water's off-colored where I've got like 1.5 feet of visibility and I've got a bright sunny day, I whack them on that color, even though conventional wisdom doesn't think that you should catch them on that. So a lot of the times you have to just experiment with it. You know, once you get started, you have to experiment. So back to the topic of the video is the best lure colors to start out with. Just like I said, you know, at the beginning of the video, let your light intensity and the water visibility dictate your initial choice, and then fish it for like 30 minutes, maybe, or 30, 40 minutes, something like that. If you're catching a few fish on it, fine. If you're not catching as many fish on it, maybe tweak the color a little bit, maybe go to just a slight, don't really change to a completely different color, go to a close color, maybe even brighter or duller based upon the conditions. And then if you're just not catching anything on it, make more of a radical change. Instead of throwing a crawdad crankbait, go to a shad pattern, something a little bit different with that. And a lot of times, you know, you'll hit on the right one. And the most difficult thing about colors when you're choosing colors for bass fishing is that a lot of times the bass they want what they want, and there's no rhyme or reason for it. I've seen times where guys behind me fishing have whacked them on on lure colors I never would have tried in a million years. But that's something you can develop over time. Initially, you have to have something to start out with. So make a long story short, guys, here's the best advice I can give you. And don't ever forget this, because this is critical. You want to start out your day by running your lure next to the boat, run it underneath the boat, maybe a couple inches, and find that color that blends in a little bit and stands out a little bit. And I know that's a pretty vague description of it, but once you start doing it, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's like you look at that crankbait running through the water, or you'll swim that jig next to the water and say, yeah, that stands out a little bit, but it also sort of subtle and it blends in a little bit. That is what you want to key in on. That's the most important thing. And a lot of that just comes with experience. So anyway, I hope it helps out, guys. We'll talk later.